Hi, I'm Sam, and this is Red Carpet Talk. I watched over 125 films in theaters for the year 2025. Today, I'm sharing my top 10 movies of 2025 list. Before getting into my top 10 list or my honorable mentions, I wanted to briefly discuss the year as a whole. This year has been very bold artistically speaking. There's a lot of genre mixing happening. You have blockbusters and indie films with social commentary that isn't afraid to comment on current day issues. And there's a lot of common themes that are appearing throughout a lot of the movies this year that I'll go through more in depth as this video progresses. I watch a wide variety of movies in different genres, so my honorable mentions as well as my actual top 10 list is going to have blockbusters, indie films, as well as international cinema. The first movie on my honorable mentions is Tron. This is a divisive film, but it's on my list solely due to the amazing Nine Inch Nails score, as well as the amazing visual effects. This movie was a visceral blockbuster experience in IMAX, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. The second movie on my list is Sorry Baby. This is a small, independent A24 film. It balances comedy and drama beautifully. Ava Victor directed, wrote, and starred in this movie. Definitely someone people should be checking out going forward, because this movie is a hidden gem. You get some great supporting performances from Naomi Ackie and Lucas Hedges as well in this film. The next on my list is Caught Stealing. Caught Stealing is directed by Darren Aronofsky, and it's a different kind of movie than most of Aronofsky's films. I would say less cerebral, but I thought it was a well-executed action thriller nonetheless, with a great ensemble led by Austin Butler. I was entertained the whole time. Next on my list, Plainclothes. Tom Blythe is such a captivating screen presence, is another person that people should be looking out for going forward. Blue Moon is the next on my honorable mentions. Richard Linklater directed 2 solid movies in 1 year, and I think he deserves all the credit for this. This one in particular takes place in one night, mostly in one setting, and Ethan Hawke gives such a good performance that keeps you entertained and interested in the movie, regardless of it being a small-scale movie. And I think he hopefully should get nominated for this movie, since he deserves it. Next on my list is Warfare. I watched this in IMAX as well. The sound design in particular really stands out to me. This movie is very immersive in IMAX and is one of the most well-executed war movies I've ever seen. It was directed by a veteran, so it depicts his actual personal experiences somewhat, and this movie was so triggering for me, but on purpose to capture the experience of war as a whole. And I just wanted to scream at the screen multiple times, wanting all of it to stop because of how well executed this movie was. It also has a really solid ensemble. The next on my list is Brighter Days Ahead. Ariana directed this music video /short. It won, I believe it won the MTV Movie Awards, biggest honor. And I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. She started an Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind motif in her music video, We Can't Be Friends, and she continues the storyline that she starts there into this music video short film, and I thought it was really good, the storyline that was continued into this. The next on my list is Sentimental Value. Neon has a handful of international films that they're distributing this year, and this is my favorite of the Neon movies. This is a family drama it has one of the best scenes of the year, in my opinion, not an exaggeration. And the reason the scene works is because of the great writing, and as well as the performances from the main female leads. And then the next on my list is Bugonia. This is Yorgos Lanthimos' satire with Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons. They both go back and forth throughout this movie, and it's a constant power struggle between the two. And this whole movie, in my opinion, is about how society perceives humanity and what people think makes a human. And I think this movie deserves credit for making me pushing me to be a more empathetic individual. I think a lot of people were thrown off by the ending of this movie. For me, I thought it made sense given what the overall themes of the movie were, and I think these are two very compelling performances that I think deserve credit. And then the final movie in my honorable mentions is How to Train Your Dragon. I know that's going to shock some people since it's a live action remake. A lot of people are going to say it's just the same as the animated movie. I think if you have to do a live action remake, this is how to do it. This movie had heart. There was changes such as Mason Thames, who plays the male lead Hiccup, and Nico Parker, I believe is her name. She is the female lead in this movie. They have really solid chemistry, more so than the animated movie does. This movie felt very tactile when it comes to the production design and the costumes, and the visual effects were just gorgeous on a big screen, and it reminded me of the magical feeling I felt as a kid watching Neverending Story with the Luck Dragon. So I think people forget that when watching films that are sometimes targeted towards kids, but I think that's an important thing for a new generation to experience nonetheless. So for those that are curious, the way I compile my top 10 list is I look at the movies that I gave the highest ratings of the year, as well as I take into account what if I was voting in the Academy for the Oscars, what films would I nominate for different categories? So my 10th movie on my list is Nouvelle Vague. I know in real life, France chose, it was just an accident as their submission for Best International Feature. This Nouvelle Vague technically counts as an international feature, so I'm pretending I would have put Nouvelle Vague as a potential submission, or considered it as a potential submission for the Academy Award, so I'm counting it in that category, as well as I think lead actor. The guy who plays Jean-Luc Godard in Nouvelle Vague was a complete unknown. I wasn't really familiar with at all. He totally transforms into the role, and you believe he's Jean-Luc Godard, and he captures his idiosyncrasies so well. And since he's such a particular director with a unique cadence and very specific body language, and I think Guillaume Marbeck is his name, just captures Jean-Luc Godard so well. He's a bit annoying, but you can also see a sense of humor in how his idiosyncrasies, but also appreciate him as a filmmaker for his influence on the entire history of cinema as a whole. Breathless is not, in Jean-Luc Godard's filmography as a whole, is not my personal favorite. I think he's a very cold director, and it's hard for me to emotionally connect with his movies. But this movie, Nouvelle Vague, I felt Richard Linklater, as I said before, he gave us 2 solid movies in one year. he understood Jean-Luc Godard's style of filmmaking so well and captured it so brilliantly. And it's just a love letter to Nouvelle Vague and New Wave movement in film history. And it's very self-aware, similar to Jean-Luc Godard's style of filmmaking. You have a lot of like cameos happen throughout, and I just had a smile on my face when this movie ended. So yeah. So my number 9 in my top 10 movies of 2025 is K-pop Demon Hunters. I would obviously nominate this for Best Animated Feature. Sony did a really good job with the animation and very unique style. I hear some people saying they just did what they did with Spider-Verse movies with this, but I do think there is a unique style of animation. There's certain creative choices that are done that they didn't need to do that made the movie more compelling, in my opinion, with the animation. I would also nominate this movie for 2 categories. For 2 songs in Best Original Song. And the 2 songs I would choose is Golden, which is a huge hit, probably the most famous song in the movie. And then the second song I would consider for Best Original Song is What It Sounds Like, which is, to me, more important within the context of the movie and the story as a whole. And it marks a very climactic moment in the movie as a whole. The first time I watched this movie, I didn't watch it at home on Netflix the way everyone else did. I watched it in theaters for the sing-along, and just watching the way the crowd was so hyped and so excited for this, and especially once the movie gets to What It Sounds Like in theaters, I just felt this visceral energy that I've never experienced, and it was just just overall excitement. And just, it was so cathartic, that moment in theaters, and the song is so beautiful, and I love the lyrics and the message of the song and just the movie as a whole, and I think that's why it's resonating with people so much. And I went to another sing-along after that because of how much I enjoyed the movie the first time around, and I learned the lyrics for the second sing-along, so this time I could actually sing along to the movie. And it's so beautiful to just see music and film just unite people regardless of age through both sing-alongs that I went to. And yeah. So my number 8 is 100 Nights of Hero. This is an adaptation of a graphic novel that I highly doubt most people watching this are familiar with at all. This was a queer fantasy movie about the need for female point of view and storytelling. This movie stars Micah Monroe, and then you have Emma Corrin, Nicholas Galitzine, Felicity Jones, Richard E. Grant, and even Charlie XCX in the cast. And I saw this trailer and I'm like, this is such a random group of people. How is this gonna work? I watched it and I thought it absolutely worked. And there's certain changes that you can do in an adaptation for a film that you can't do in a graphic novel, such as like the score really stood out to me, since it sounded like people whispering to you throughout the film, which went with the themes of the film, because this movie felt like folklore from like centuries ago being passed on to the present day, but yet it's a graphic novel, which is crazy to me. And I thought, like, Charlie XCX, I haven't really seen act in anything before. She was so like mesmerizing of a presence. The way this film is edited is, it takes course over 100 nights, so it is very slow paced for some people, since there's just a lot of waiting around in the castle. But to pass the time, Emma Corrin tells Micah Monroe stories, and Charlie XCX appears in the main story that Emma Corrin's character is telling Micah Monroe's character. And because of that, I think it's very well edited. This is a movie that if you don't have good editing, it could easily be very confusing, jumping back and forth between the Micah Monroe, the Charlie XCX storyline, and everything else going on in this movie. And I just thought it was like really cool to see a fantasy concept, like a queer fantasy concept with such a solid cast, with like really beautiful just craftsmanship as a whole. Even if it is on an indie level, it didn't feel like it was an indie film, and it just inspired me to honestly like reconnect with my like imaginative side. And yeah, I loved seeing a movie like this. And usually this is the kind of movie like studios and like people are afraid to take a chance on. To see all these like really cool actors work on this was awesome. My number 7 is One Battle After Another. Viva la Revolution. This is, in a lot of people's eyes, the movie of the year. For me, it was an immediate masterpiece. I know some people consider that an exaggeration. I don't. This is my personal favorite in Paul Thomas Anderson's work that he's ever done. I think it's his most personal film. He's married to Maya Rudolph in real life, and he has kids with her, and I feel you see, and he's implied that some of the characters are inspired by Maya Rudolph, and even like her mom herself, like the Tiana Taylor character, I believe is inspired by Maya Rudolph's mom, for instance. I feel like this is the most personal film he's ever done, and as someone who's mixed, I think there's something beautiful about the bond between like a parent and a child being two different skin tones and just like still having a connection regardless. And you see that with the Leonardo DiCaprio character and the daughter played by Chase Infinity. This cast is just insane. I love this ensemble so much. I mean, the main 6, DiCaprio, as I mentioned already, Bob, there were so many people dressed up as Bob for Halloween this year that I saw. You got Sean Penn as Lockjaw, an instantly memorable villain. I would nominate him for supporting actor for sure. Holy moly with that character. There's so much going on with him. Tiana Taylor is the sole reason I wanted to see this movie. I wasn't super sold on the trailers, to be honest. And I saw her in 1001, and I was like, whatever project she does next, they don't even realize how much of a win that is to have her in the project based on how nuanced and layered she was in that. The opening scene is her. Instantly, I was locked in with what was happening in this movie. Because of her screen presence, she's a force to be reckoned with, and her presence is haunting the movie the whole time, even when she's not on screen. And some people don't think she had enough screen time to really be considered for supporting actress. I think she does, and her performance is not a stereotype. It is very layered, and if you watch her Actors on Actors with Oscar Isaac, she goes in detail on how layered her performance is, and I highly recommend people check it out if you're a fan of One Battle After Another, or even if you're not, just to like see how she approached the character. And then you have other people in the cast. Benicio is just fun, but he's also an important character in the overall plot of the movie. You got Regina Hall. I feel like is not getting enough credit for this movie. She's someone who's an underrated actress, and like she does more than people give her credit for in this movie, than I think people realize. And I was wondering like what happened to her character after the events of this movie, very much so. And then of course Chase Infinity is the daughter, as I mentioned before. No one knew her before this movie, and she just like was super memorable with the time she had with that. Especially there's iconic outfits already that she's wearing, like the leather jacket and the tutu skirt thing going on. And yeah, it's just, this movie rocks. It has great dialogue and just like such a wild plot, so many moving set pieces, and I give the movie credit for the amazing cinematography capturing all those set pieces so well. like, there's a lot going on, especially, like, near the end. There's, like, one action set piece that's, like, I was like, whoa. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to, like, look at a chase scene the same way again after that. This movie is awesome, and if it wins all the awards, including Best Picture, I'm not going to be mad, to be honest. My number 6 is Testament of Anne Lee. So there's like 4 big things I want to talk about, since I would nominate this for so many categories, honestly. I think the craftsmanship in this movie is just undeniable. The first thing I want to talk about is, I guess, the direction of this movie. The Brutalist was one of my favorite movies of last year. Brady Corbet directed it, and he co-wrote The Brutalist with his wife, Mona Fastful. Fast forward to this year, Testament of Anne Lee. Testament of Anne Lee is directed by Mona Fastful, and she co-wrote it with her husband, Brady Corbet. Those 2 movies back to back, like, being unbelievably great movies, is just wow. Both are masterpieces in different ways. Testament of Anne Lee, I feel like this is such a specific story being told. It's such a female-driven movie, and honestly, from what I've heard, Mona just seems to have such a grasp on Anne Lee as a whole in a way that, like, no other person does, and she has a very specific vision. She's even involved in, like, the songwriting process and the choreography for this film, which is so specific. This film does not work without her direction, and I think it's, like, one of the most innovative musicals I've ever seen, and I love the genre of musicals, but she just did she used music in a diegetic sense in such a strong way that I've never seen any person do before. And the story of Anne Lee should just not work, but because of her direction, it does work. And the writing is so bold. You literally have a movie about a religious leader from the 1700s. And I'm not religious at all, but this movie just moved me so much with the beauty of music as a spiritual experience and the way it was captured and just the storytelling between the writing and the editing of this movie. Going into the second part of this movie, I wanted to talk about the music. The music, the experience of watching the music on screen and listening to it in theaters was just so beautiful. The combination of score and soundtrack is probably my favorite of the year. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to the full soundtrack at home yet because the album doesn't drop until January. They only have 2 songs released so far, and I know there's 3 original songs in this movie altogether. 2 of them have been explicitly stated online. I was desperately trying to figure out what the 3rd original song was, and I wasn't able to. So I would nominate at least one of the original songs in this movie. And then the sound design was just amazing in theaters. Like, experiencing all that music, it was so transcendent. Going into my 3rd point, the performances. Amanda Seyfried, I think this is like her best role she's ever done. This is the best use of her voice. She's done musicals like Mamma Mia, and she's done in Mamma Mia 2, and then she's done Les Mis, but this uses her voice and like understands what makes her special as a performer, as an actress, as an actor, and just utilizes her to her full potential. She's singing, she's dancing, she's unbelievably fearless. You see her tackle an accent. I mean, she's playing a real person, and you just see all the struggles and like how she was persecuted for her beliefs. And even if you don't agree with it, it's hard to watch at times. And it's just, her performance is so unbelievably moving. And there's other people in the cast I like too, but Lewis Pullman in particular stands out as her brother. And he's also singing in the movie as well. And, like, he gave a really good performance in Thunderbolts. I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, but he shows so much duality between the different, like, personas he's embodying in Thunderbolts. And the fact that I'm saying his performance in this is even better, I think shows you how amazing he is as an actor. And I think he's definitely someone I'm going to keep an eye on more going forward. And then the fourth thing I want to talk about is just the level of craftsmanship in this movie. The costumes, the hair, like Amanda Seyfried's hair just, like, really stood out to me for some reason. And then the production design was just beautiful to look at times. This movie was just like unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I think some people are going to find it pretentious, but it just totally worked for me in a way that I just was not expecting. And it deserves more credit. It's not being talked about as much as I wish it was. My number 5 is a big blockbuster that I think is going to shock some people that I have on my list. Fantastic Four: First Steps. I'm a huge fan of the Galactus trilogy in the comics with the Fantastic Four. I haven't read a ton of comics in general. I grew up more on, like, stuff outside of superheroes when it comes to comics, but I have read a little bit, and that's one of the ones I have read. And I was just eager to see this adapted well, and I thought this movie adapted Galactus so well. And Silver Surfer is, like, one of my favorite villains in the comics. And there's key changes that they make with her that I was honestly very, like, nervous that they were making. When I heard Julia Garner was attached, I was like, I don't know if they're going to do like this or that they do in the comics. And they made certain changes to the character that made sense for the story that they were telling here, and I felt was satisfying, even though they were different. And I thought the performances were great. I wasn't sure about people like Pedro Pascal being cast as, like, Reed Richards, and but he delivered, and him and Vanessa Kirby brought way more depth and layers to those two characters than I was expecting, to be honest. And their performances are great. Joseph Quinn surprised me as Johnny Storm. I was not sure about his casting. I saw the movie and I shut up because I was wrong about his casting initially, and I'm willing to admit that. And then Eben Moss-Bachrach, he was solid he was solid as well. Like, and then, yeah, Julia Garner, I'm a huge Julia Garner fan. She killed it. She killed it as Silver Surfer. And she's so, like, her voice is so menacing. And it's just, like, and there's some scenes with her where you're like, oh my God. And you're like, oh, like, with when she's going after them at times, and you're just like, geez. And Galactus is such, like, a menacing presence with the visual effects that they did with him. And it was a more accurate depiction of him than in the previous movie that depicted him in live action. And I loved the production design, like, and I was lucky enough to see, like, the sets in person when I went to New York Comic Con, and oh my gosh, that, like, kitchen set was just cool in person to see, and, like, seeing Herbie in person was so cool. In the living room set, oh my God, so cool. I know I keep repeating that, but it just was awesome. The score grew on me. At first I wasn't sure about the score. It grew on me, but this was just a fun action blockbuster. And I know there's other superhero movies that came out this year, but this one, I just was like, I left being just so happy, being like, you know what, they did this justice. And I haven't been excited for a lot of the recent Marvel movies recently. And I left that movie and watching that post credits being like, ooh, I actually want to see what comes next for once in a long time. So my number 4 is Love Me. I feel like a lot of people are going to hear the title and be like, what even is that? This is a movie with Steven Yeun and Kristen Stewart. It's such a crazy concept, honestly. You have Kristen Stewart playing a buoy, like that floats in the water, but she's kind of like a tech version of a buoy. And then her character, who's an object, by the way, is romantically interested in Steven Yeun's character, which is a satellite in the sky. This movie is crazy. They're both two objects, and yet I was so invested in the movie, in the story. I don't think most people are going to have this on this list, but it was such a bold, ambitious concept of two objects that I'm somehow emotionally invested in a romance about, and I empathize with them. And they're not even human, but they're trying to figure out what humanity is. This whole movie is very philosophical, and it's a sci-fi movie, and it's about, like, basically Earth is deserted, and they're, like, the only two, like, things left. And they're trying to, like, what happens when everything is gone? Is there still some sense of humanity that remains? Or is it gone completely? And this movie touches on all of that with those characters. And their arcs are so, like, complicated because you have to jump from, like, live action buoy to satellite to animated versions of them, like animated Avatar versions of them, to live action again, with Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun's, like, actual human bodies being shown. And there's such good voice acting with them. You hear their voices evolve as their character arcs progress, and it's just so unique and unlike anything. Such unconventional just storytelling, just very, that I've just never seen before, anything like that. And I know it was divisive and not everyone's gonna have it on their list, but to me it just stood out. It's just something I've never seen before, and I give it props for that. My number 3 is Pillion. This is the movie that we desperately need right now. This movie, I was lucky enough to watch it at New York Film Festival, the US premiere. I saw Alexander Skarsgård and the director in person. The director was wearing a leather kilt, and Skarsgård was wearing a leather jacket, going with the themes of this movie. They both looked amazing, but they also had a very insightful Q&A as well afterwards. This movie is a gay BDSM rom-com. It's very subversive, keyword subversive, but it's like a subversive version of a Richard Curtis rom-com. So think like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Love Actually, Bridget Jones's Diary, but where British charm, but again, gay BDSM as well. This movie, like, should not work on paper, but it just, like, does because of just the brilliant direction. It's so unique, and it captures just the queer experience really well. But honestly, it has a message that I think all people need to hear regardless of whether you're queer or not. And I wish more rom-coms had great messages like this, to truth be told. But BDSM, it's not just BDSM for the sake of BDSM. There's a purpose to it to advance the themes of the story and the message being told. And I think this is a really solid adaptation. During the Q&A, the director was talking about, like, the key changes that were made compared to the original source material, and everyone was clapping when they heard about those changes, and it serves us as the story being told. I will say, I think one of the most underrated acting performances of the year is Harry Melling, who plays the lead. Everyone's talking about Skarsgård and how attractive he is, which he is, but I think Harry Melling is a very unconventional rom-com lead that I've never seen before. And he does not only act, but he also sings in the movie, since he's part of, like, a little barbershop quartet kind of thing going on. And I don't want to spoil the movie too much of his journey that he goes through, but it's such a important journey that needs to be told on screen, and I'm so excited to watch this again when it comes out around Valentine's and for people to see this. We need more movies like this. This is hands down my favorite queer movie of the year, and I think one of the best queer movies ever. So hell yeah to Pillion. My number 2 movie is Voice of Hin Rajab. This is hands down the most important movie of the year. It's hard for me to talk about without getting emotional, so I'm going to try my best. I want to start by reading my Letterboxd review, not because I'm being lazy, but I feel like after the movie I had a lot of emotions that I wanted to articulate, and I wrote a lot of my emotions that I was feeling out in that review. So I'm just reading it so people have an idea of the film. So I said, wow, this is the rare instance where ratings don't matter. The only detail that matters is that the world sees the need to immortalize Hin Rajab with the atrocities of Gaza in the way the U.S. immortalizes Emmett Till with the atrocities against Black Americans. The movie explicitly addresses that it is a recreation of real events, with trivial slight differences such as the color of a shirt. However, we all see in that explicit acknowledgement how painstakingly accurate this movie is to the nth degree. The directors and actors deserve the recognition for doing the story justice without being exploitative. I cried consistently throughout this movie, at least 5 times. If you don't even feel a single ounce of empathy for any of that, then you are genuinely heartless. My heart aches for Hin. My heart aches for Gaza. And my heart aches for the world. So that was the review I wrote. And this is, to me, my favorite, or not my favorite, what I consider to be the best of the international films from this year. And there's been a really solid year for international films as a whole. And Neon has made a lot of great international films this year, but if I was voting on an Academy, this is what I would choose to win. And it's important, but it's so well crafted, and as I said before, it could have been exploitative when it wasn't. It deserves all the credit for the writing, and it also uses sound in a very innovative way, because it is jumping back and forth between the real recording of the real little girl and actors, and it's not just like a random actress playing the little girl. It's her actual voice, and it's just unlike anything I've experienced before, and no words are going to do justice to this movie and what's happened to her and what's happening in the world in general. But I hope you at least understand the importance of it a bit for me briefly discussing it right now. My number 1 is not going to be super surprising if you saw my top 10 list last year. I had The Brutalist and Wicked tied for number 1. So this year I have Wicked for Good as my number 1. Act 2 of the iconic Broadway musical. People have a lot of thoughts on this adaptation and whether it should be even considered for Best Picture at all at the Oscars. I am gonna say it does deserve to get recognition, and that might be a little bit divisive, but I don't care. I love this movie, and I've seen the Broadway musical 3 times on Broadway. I had very high standards for this adaptation. I felt John M. Chu absolutely delivered. I go in depth on John M. Chu and Wicked in my previous musicals video. So I will try my best not to repeat too much in here, but I think John M. Chu purposely chose to go a more intimate route with this movie than his previous musicals that he's done, or just music-driven movies that he's done. And him and the cinematographer deliberately feature a lot of close-ups in Wicked for Good, and they highlight the facial expressions of the actresses and the actors in this movie. And this movie is so well cast, and you really, whether it be Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, Marissa Bode, Jonathan Bailey, or Ethan Slater, I think you see a lot of sorrow, resentment, and regret. That was like the key 3 words that stuck in my head as I was leaving Wicked for Good after seeing it in theaters for the first time. And the reason why I felt so much of that was because of how good the actors were in this movie, but also because of the cinematography choices that were made. And I haven't read the book, but I am familiar with the musical. As I said, I've seen it 3 times. I felt they adapted this well. And I also went to go see the movie again a second time, except this time it was as a double feature. I went to see Wicked and Wicked for Good back-to-back in theaters with a small intermission. Kind of similar to how you would experience the play on Broadway a bit, except longer probably. And it was very epic, honestly, experiencing that the way. It was very overwhelming. I also watched Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 together back-to-back this year. Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair is what it's called. And I view it similar to that, of like it's an epic story that works better when you watch it back-to-back, both parts. And I think a lot of the complaints about Act 2, I think, in the criticisms about the creative choices that are done, make more sense. The creative choices make more sense when you watch it back to back, and I feel are very purposeful, and there's a reason behind everything, and there's a lot of clever Easter eggs. Easter eggs is the wrong word, because that makes it sound more trivial than it is. There's a lot of purposeful details that you could see scattered throughout Wicked Act 1 and also Wicked for Good, aka Act 2. And just, I'm so thankful for what John M. Chu did. I'm so thankful for the cast for doing the material justice. I also want to give props to just the rest of the craftsmanship on this movie. I think the costume design is gorgeous. They had a really hard job of living up to the iconic costumes in the original Wizard of Oz, or even The Wiz. And they did their own take on that, and even the makeup, and they were able to avoid copyright stuff that with the original Wizard of Oz, since there's some copyright issues that people don't realize with that. And so that's a tricky task to pull off, of like doing your own without like fully replicating what's been done before, but making it still feel familiar. The production design was gorgeous, like the yellow brick road, and just like there's the one scene with like the plethora of tulips. I forgot how many exactly there were, but I think it might have been in the millions how many tulips it had. If not, I apologize, but for not getting the exact number. But yeah, and then some people are going to have different opinions on the original songs. I liked the original songs. I felt they serviced the narrative being told and furthered the characterization. And I love both movies dearly. I hope you enjoy me talking about my top 10 movies of 2025. I know I had a hard time making this top 10 list, and there was movies I didn't even mention at all that I was upset I couldn't include on my top 10 or my honorable mentions that would normally be on my top 10 list if it was a weaker year. I felt this was a very strong year for movies, and I hope other people felt that way as well. Please like, comment, subscribe, and please leave comments about like what you your thoughts are on the movies I mentioned and what your own top 10 list is. And you can check out other videos I've done, or even my short movie reviews that I post on this YouTube channel, as well as Instagram and TikTok under the account at Red Carpet Talk with 2 Ds. I might do more videos soon. I might do a most anticipated movies list. I might do some Oscars talk. We'll see. I hope everyone had a good year, and here's to everyone hopefully having a good 2026.